Well, on the way out of the library that day, they happened to find the information I was looking for, and they gave me a copy. But I got kind of the idea, and I thought it'd be kind of fun. And so I wrote Dolly Wells. And this is the first letter I wrote to the United States Treasury. And this book here is not much in it, but actually a compilation of letters that I wrote to the Treasury and their answers to me. And I wrote Dolly Wells, and I actually wrote it to Dolly Wells, Director of Consumer Affairs, room 1320 Main Street, or Main Treasury in Pennsylvania Avenue. And I asked her that question, and she gave me an answer. Actually, she didn't answer it. A fellow by the name of Russell Monk, Assistant General Counsel, International Affairs, I don't know why that was, answered the letter. And he answered it, and then, but I found a couple of little things that didn't quite match with the information I got from the library. Well, now I kind of thought, well, I knew who to write to, and so I thought that was kind of interesting. So one day I was talking to my wife, and of course I didn't type back then or anything. Didn't learn to type until I was 49 years old. So, but I married this really nice, dark-haired girl, and she had a lot of talents that I never did have, and one of them was a lot of brains, but anyway, it was pretty neat. So I said, I'd like to ask these questions. So she said, I'll type them up. What is money? Where does money come from? How has it been created? By whom and for what purpose is money created? And a bunch more. And of course, this time I sent it right to Mr. Monk. And actually I didn't. I just wrote it back to the Dear Sir. Well, then Mr. Monk answered my letter again. And the next one, he gave me an 8-page letter. And believe it or not, this is where I get most of the information I started with. And he said, and there's some things in here that's not quite 100% accurate now that I know. And of course, in the process, I've learned some things about words. There's 3 main reasons you use words. To entertain, which I hope to do a little bit of that tonight. To inform, which I hope to do a lot of that tonight. And deceive you, which I hope to do none of that tonight. But that's the 3 things that we actually use words for most of the time. And so it's really struck to me when I heard that. In fact, I heard it the first, the inform and deceive, and my brother says, that's not true. We use lots of words many times just to entertain. And of course, that's true. And so then Russell Monk wrote back, and he said, the Board of Governors of the federal system has responsibility in the United States monetary policy. Then he went on to say, when the economy grows and there are more economic transactions, more money is needed to pay for them. Now that makes sense, doesn't it? If there was 5 of us in this room and we had to have $100 a piece to meet our buy and sell the need, we'd only need $500 money in the economy, wouldn't we? But I see a lot more than 5 in here, so if we still only had $500, some of us would be a little short of that $100, wouldn't we? So the money has to expand constantly as production expands or the population expands. And most people don't really think about that. They say, well, any amount will do. Well, that's not true. Because if we just had 5 coins and there was 10 of us, there ain't no way we could all have a coin at the same time, could we? And so these things are really important that you must understand. Then he went on to say, if the money supply increased, money must be created. And that's true. And see, many people tell you, well, gold don't have to be created, it's just money. It's just naturally money. Well, I don't think that's true, because if it was naturally money, they wouldn't have been able to demonetize it, would they? And they did. And not only that, if it was naturally money, you wouldn't have to pass a law in 1792 to declare gold and silver money, would you? It was already naturally money. Besides, I had a guy send me a little vial of gold, and I happened to have it with me tonight. And I never did know how much it was. And I told him when he wanted to send me the gold for the book he was buying from me, my first book, I said, well, I don't know if I want to take that. I don't know what the world I'd do with it. Oh, he said, don't be a heart. Never mind. And so I said, well, okay. So he sent me this little vial that had some liquid in it, a little bit of something at the bottom, which I've always hoped was gold. And I had a clue what to do with it. And I kept it, and I thought it was kind of neat to look at. So the other day, I really got curious about this, so I took it down to a gold dealer. And I said, could I sell this to you? Oh, heavens, no, I wouldn't know what it was. I shook it around. He said, I'm pretty sure it's gold dust. But he said, I wouldn't know what to do with it. He said, first place, I'd have to dry it. And if it's gold dust, and I'm pretty sure it is, he said, if it got real dry, if you just sneezed, it'd all be gone anyway. I wouldn't be able to do nothing with it, and I wouldn't want to do nothing with it. Well, I found out hey, it may not work so good for money because I can't get rid of the stuff. Well, then Tommy over there, he said, well, Byron, I happen to have a little scale that will measure grains. It's for loading shells or whatever. And I said, well, would you be kind enough to bring it up and let's see if we can do this? So we did, and I thought, well, I'll just pull the liquid out and then, get the gold out somehow. And it was the strangest thing because the liquid wouldn't come out, but the gold just came out in one little pile. And I was sure it was gold in. It was heavy. You could tell the way it hit it was heavy. It piled up about this high, and it turned out to be 2 grains of gold, 2.5 grains of gold. And I've always wondered how you would know, because at gold is $1,000 an ounce, that makes $1 2 grains of gold. I was always curious just exactly how much 2 grains of gold was. Nobody seemed to know. I know now because I know exactly what 2.5 of it is. So I'm only a half a grain off, which isn't very much. And so this was all pretty interesting because it taught me that all money is fiat money. Don't kid yourself. Even gold. Because it's money by legal definition. And because, somebody had to determine exactly what the weight and purity of it. So, it's not that metal money is good and paper money is bad. There's another thing that's much more important in here, and I'll get to that in a minute. And so he went on to say, if money, it must be created, and that's true. Then he said, but the actual creation of money always involves an extension of credit by private commercial banks. If you don't borrow, there is no money. Now you think about that. If somebody had not borrowed, there would not be a penny that we could buy anything we're going to have for supper tonight. Not my drink, or not your food, or anything. There wouldn't be any money out there. Well, now, that isn't the way gold and silver work. Now, this is the most important thing we've got to understand, because gold and silver was an element of the raw resource of the earth, right? And it took all 3 things that I talked about combined in order to make it work. You had to have the knowledge of what it was. In fact, when I did my last book, Modern Money Secrets, and I'll show you one after a bit, there was a kid playing in a creek in North Carolina, and he found this kind of pretty yellow rock. He didn't know what it was, but it weighed 17 pounds, and so he took it home. It was kind of neat. His family didn't have a clue what it was, so they kicked it up against the door and used it for a doorstop for 3 years. And then one day a jeweler happened to come by, and he looked, he said, by golly, that's gold. So they want to know if they'd sell it. Well, sure, I didn't care. So they sold him that 17-pound gold rock of gold, and I don't know how pure it was, I don't have a clue, for $3.50. And then, believe it or not, when they knew they had gold in the creek, they didn't even mine it till after they got all their product, agriculture, and things taken care of for the winter. Because you couldn't go to the food store and buy food, so the food they raised and processed for themselves was much more important than digging gold. You want me to wait a minute until she gets all through, or it's not going to bother me if it don't bother you guys. You just go ahead. My wife said I could talk my way through any hurricane. Okay, so now here's the important thing. When they switches from the metal money to the paper money, they switched it from money that represented wealth and production. Not that gold was anything magical or better than anything else, but the principle was it represented the production the people produced. When they switched it to the paper money, it represents how much you owe to the bank. And that's all it represents, is how much you owe to the bank.